You are watching the Deadfoot Diver Podcast with Curt, the Deadfoot Diver.
When you're diving, so back then you wouldn't have even had any like formal rebreather training back then, would you? It like
No, I spent
literally, how did you learn?
uh, uh, um the you know I mean I was I was already a relatively accomplished deep air wreck diver. I mean we were diving the Andrea Doria. I probably, at that point I had uh, I'd say I had probably 100 air dives on the Doria, maybe another 20 or 30 gas dives on the Doria. But the rebreathers were like the new thing. So I was an already experienced diver, but it is we relied on uh, the diver community as opposed to the certification agencies. There were certification agencies, and a lot of the guys that I was diving with were, like scuba instructors or something, but a lot of them weren't. So, I mean, I was teaching open water scuba through NASDS, but doing deep air dives on, the Andrea Doria, and we were playing around with things like nitrox and helium without any education whatsoever. I took a class. It wasn't even a class. It was like a lecture from Billy Deans. Billy Deans came up to New Jersey from Florida, and he's like, this is what we're doing with mixed gas. And there was no certification agency. There was no certification. There was none of that. And but it was I mean it was like those guys were way ahead of what we were doing at the time in New Jersey. And I think it was like a year later he came back to New Jersey to do some diving, and he was like, oh, you guys really got this wired now. He's like, we're starting a certification agency, IAND. There was no technical diving. It was IANTD, but they added the T for technical later. And they had two certifications, nitrox and trimix. And Billy basically certified us, uh, 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 John Jurgen and myself, you know, brand new certification agency and all that, and we'd already been diving this stuff for
So what's your cert number? Or is it low, like in the low
it's
like under 100?
50. I think I'm 58, and John Jurga is 57, or could be 59 and 58. John Jurga's got one number lower than me, and he's never let me forget it ever. He's like, I was certified before you. Um, but so I was already an accomplished diver. I was already doing a lot of wreck dives. This new diving apparatus, but rebreathers were also, I mean, killing guys when every guy's like building his own unit. You had to be careful, but it's a year after that. I talked to Martin Parker at AP Valves, the inspiration, one of the first, you know, rebreathers for the public,
Yeah.
and he was like, we got 5 units, and we're going to build another 5 units, and I was like, great, I'll take one. He's like, No, forget it. You live in America. Like everybody sues everybody there. He's like, besides, he said they're already spoken for. And the guys who were making, there was a company who was making Mark 15 military rebreathers. But the problem was they were going under. They were, they would take an order, but their suppliers were like people that I knew, and they're like, now those guys, they're not paying their bills. That's like, whatever you do, don't give them money. If you can, if you can hand the money and take the stuff, okay, maybe that'll work. But the Mark 15 was a military style, and what we wanted as civilian wreck divers was completely different. And we wanted deep diving rebreathers, and the Mark 15 military goals are military goals. Commercial diving is commercial diving goals, not even military goals. Military goals. So recreational wreck divers, what we wanted to do was different, and so it is. There's no experience that you can have diving.
Oh yeah, absolutely. When it comes to now, that brings me to another question. Like back when you and I first started diving back in the 90s, when I was just getting out of diving, I was actually starting to get into doing some technical stuff. There was no training back then at all.
No.
Basically, unless you went down to Florida and got trained by like Shaq Exley or something like that, right? Like,
Well,
one of
yeah,
my friends.
but it's also Tom Out and Shaq Exley and the Cave guys. They were doing some amazing stuff, and but there were they were also trying to do exploration, and they weren't trying to really teach anybody. I mean, they were maybe doing some teaching on the side to make some money, but their heart and soul was into the exploration. So I mean, today, I mean, we are much safer as divers today. I mean, the equipment's better, the procedures are better. You've got a much better support network. Training is better. Everything's better. But I mean, there was a time where diving, the diving technology had kind of gotten ahead of our ability to utilize the technology. So guys were getting hurt. There were diving fatalities, not because the technology failed them. And I can't think, other than medical issues. And when I say medical issues, I mean like guy jumps in the water and has a heart attack. Other than medical issues, I can't think of a single diving accident where it's not the diver's fault.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, he ran out of air. What would he do that for? Well, I mean, we plan for every eventuality. So the thing is, it's up to you. Don't dive beyond your limitations. And the cave diving guys are real good about, but because cave diving is linear. It's like, follow the line in, follow the line out. It's much easier to that is far more organized than wreck diving, where okay, you jump in the water and where are you going to go? Okay, well, I'm going to the chapel, or I'm going to the galley, or I'm going to the wheelhouse, or okay, and how are you going to get there? And there, where are you going to go? So, almost anywhere in wreck diving, we're not necessarily following the route in is more likely than not uh, 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 going to be it's more likely that the way out is not going to be just retracing that back to the starting point. We do circuits as opposed to linear in and out, and it's a different discipline. Wreck diving, cave diving, ice diving, mine diving, all overhead environment, all similar. Yet when you really when where the rubber hits the road, they're different. And it's like those subtle differences are quite often uh, uh, only profound at the extreme end of the sport. So it's like, a guy can say, I can say, oh, I'm a really good wreck diver. You know what? I think I'm going to go mine diving. What the fuck? I don't know anything about mine diving. That certainly is not that's one of those is just not going to probably not going to end well. Just because you're still alive does not mean you were right.
Yeah.
So it's like, guys do stuff and then they go, hey, I'm still alive. I must be right. And it's like, no, actually, I don't think so. You're just lucky.
You just got lucky.
Well, the thing is, you can't dive with luck. When I went to Oak Island, they tracked me down. They called me up and they said, listen, first of all, we've about had it with divers. Because we've had like I forget what it was, 3 or 4 or whatever guys. We've had 3 or 4 different guys. They've been in this thing and they can't seem to get any results. They can't get us. And I'm like, okay, give me the specifics. What's the deal? And they explained it to me. And they're like, okay, well, we've got this thing, and there is a shaft, there is a drill string in the hole. It is cored down into this chamber, and it's like 200. I forget what it was. It's 220 feet or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, what's the problem? It's like, oh, they can't get down. And I said, well, send me some of the, they had, what do you have for video? And they said, oh, well, we've used a drop camera and we've videotaped the divers. And, it's like, you got a guy who gets down there and he's like, oh, I can't get into the opening. It's like, dude, they told you it was 27 inches. It's not like, God, that 27 inches is really tight. It's like, no, it's 27 inches. You were either going to be able to fit into something 27 inches, but the thing is, it's not 27 inches, because then down around, I don't know, 180 feet or something like that, they drilled. You've got the shaft, but then they drilled from the outside. A drill string came in, a 6-inch pipe came in, and then went in. So it's kind of somewhere in there. There's a 6-inch string of pipes. So it's like, oh, well, it's not It's not 27 inches. It's 21 inches with the 6 inches of pipe. Now, if the 6-inch pipe goes right across in the middle, that means you've got 6 inches in the middle, and you got 10.5 inches on either side. So if you can't fit into 27 inches, clearly you are living in a fantasy land. I mean, the 27 inches has to be, boy, this is pretty roomy. And it was like, can you move the pipe? Oh, nobody knows because nobody got down that far. So the thing is, it's like, if you're planning, if you just say, you know what, I could do that, without crunching the numbers first. It's like, no, you're not going to be successful. I mean, you have to be able to visualize your success, and it shouldn't involve like a white stallion or like, a Excalibur held high above your head. It's like, how are you going to do the nuts and bolts part? How are you going to do the down and dirty part? So it's like, okay, well, I'm like, you know what? If I got a helmet on my head, 10.5 inches, if I can't move the pipe, I probably am not going to be able to make 10.5 inches happen. I can squeeze my body by, but I can't. I'm not going to. But I don't know that I'm not going to. The pipe's not going to have some motion. They couldn't tell whether it just went across and drilled the other side, or it was hanging down, or whatever. But the thing is that, so there's some stuff that you can't go to the unknown with a plan that is so precise, because you don't know. It is the unknown by definition. So it's like, the stuff that you do know, it's like you got to really like kind of work that out. I was diving in the water, and my friend Howard was working topside, because I did that Oak Island dive on hard hat, and the guys were talking to Howard, because they'd say things, like, when I was there, I was like the field goal kicker. Like, nobody wanted to talk to me. They were afraid they were going to mess up my feng shui. Like, don't, he's the diver, leave him alone. It's like, but they'd go to Howard, and they go, do you think that he's gonna get in down there? And Howard's like, he's already been in down there. They're like, what? I said, he's already been in down there, probably a couple thousand times. In his mind, we're working. What if this happened? What if that happens? How about, is this a problem? Is that a problem? So the thing is, by the time you get down there, you're not saying, oh, if only I brought a spoon and a waffle iron, everything would have been okay. So you have to get there and say, if you're going to need a spoon and a waffle iron, then that's what you got with you.
Yeah.
Okay, let me get the waffle iron. So and he would, what Howard said was the obvious fact that, like, no, that's exactly what happens. When you're making a dive, you're kind of visualizing it in your head and how it's going to go. And the thing is, if you have not planned the dive correctly, then you're going to know early on if it starts to fall apart. And then you're like, okay, I got to be grown up. I got to call the dive. and you know, I'll come back. I'll come back later, or
Yep.
tomorrow, or whatever. But that, you know, I mean, that's that. It's not. You can't get by just with heart. I mean, heart drives everything, but you know, you have to have the ability to. You can't dive beyond the limitations of your ability to plan.
Yep.
And it's like, so, you know, every single dive, you have an opportunity to learn a little bit more. You get a little. Your planning is going to be a little bit better. You have a little bit more recall of personal experiences that can help you, not necessarily for every dive, but for those dives where things are kind of unusual.
So what was it like being inside the chamber once you got in there? I have to ask that.
Um, you know, the thing is, you know, I mean, I've been commercial diving, you know, 40 years. I guess at that time it was pretty close to that, something like that, 30 something years. I can't tell you how many times people hire you to do things, and they're like, tell me the truth, tell me what's happening there, and when you tell them stuff they don't want to hear, they're like, this diver sucks. You know, it's like we got I la 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 la. You know what the problem is? The problem isn't that we're wrong. The problem is we got to get another guy because this guy. But you know, so for me, I mean, any kind of working dive. I mean, I literally had a checklist of things to do once I got down there, and so I'm you know I'm working with Howard. Howard's like, okay, the first thing we're going to do is, you know, the whipping post, or the tunnel coming in, or the treasure chest on top of the pile. So I literally was just you know, working off a to-do list, and you can't take, if you're trying to be effective on a deeper dive with and you got a lot more to do than you got time to do it. You, it's not the time for doing high fives. It's not the time for going, let me just, I would like to take a moment to just feel the experience. It's like, no, shut up, get to work. I'm not paying you to feel the experience. I'm paying you for information. So, but I have to say, the even though it was the unknown, even though it was like, oh, we've never been there before, it was pretty much exactly what I expected from the data. In other words, they had sonar. You know, they had a lot of information on what was down there that they could pass on to me. And those guys, the guys at Oak Island are the coolest guys. They are awesome guys.
I'm
And
hoping to get to meet them this summer, actually, when I'm out there.
well, I'll tell you, Rick and Marty are super guys. They are uh, uh, the best guys to work with. But it's like, you know, I literally got down there. I was confident about everything I told them. It wasn't what they wanted to hear.
Yep.
And that part I don't have control over, and I feel bad for them because, you know, they wanted to hear, it's like, oh, here's the treasure chest, and here's the manacles from the whipping post, and it's like, but the thing is, I have enough experience as a diver that I could plan. I wasn't just saying I couldn't find a whipping post.
Yeah.
I could say, this is what your whipping post is. The whipping post that you see on your sonar, it's one string, and then there's a PVC water pipe that somehow ended up falling into the hole. But the thing is, because of their distance, they appear to be the same diameter, because you're looking at the 1-inch pipe up close and the 4-inch pipe further away. So it's like, I think for everything, all of the things that they wanted to know about, we supplied them with the answer. But it's like, I felt early on that it was a naturally occurring cavity. And when I actually found the sink where stuff is kind of filtering down into the sink, because I'm like, down there rooting around and stuff, and I could see how this cavity could have been. It's not a mystery how it got created. Somewhere down below that, even deeper in the aquifer, it's stuff is gravel and stuff is funneling out. But it was an awesome experience. I read a book on Oak Island when I was a kid. I was a kid, which was a long time ago, and the book I read smelled like an old book back then. So it's like, this is something. This is something. It's like I knew about Oak Island. I had an interest in Oak Island, and then I had the opportunity to go there. And ply my trade, and it's like, gosh, what's better than that?
Which is amazing. Yeah, I mean, I followed Oak Island since I remember when I was a kid, reading the Reader's Digest
Sure. Yeah.
article that came up. So it's been amazing, and the stuff that they're pulling up there every single episode, I'm like, okay, when's the next episode coming out? Right? I don't want to wait a week.
Well, the thing is that TV has made a real difference because the real treasure of Oak Island is what you see every week, every episode, every show. You got these two brothers, markedly different. The family came together and sent Marty off to college, and Rick was the one who he stayed home and made things work for the family. Rick sacrificed, Marty excelled, and now they're in a position where they get to work together on something, and that's the treasure of Oak Island. I mean, whatever they find, whatever they bring up, for them, there's not going to be anything better than that. And I think that's why people like the show. They like the show because it's a very positive vibration. Why is it a very positive vibration? Well, because there's no fakery, there's no bullshit. They love each other, and the thing is,
sorry,
that when Rick and Marty, their family keeps getting bigger and bigger, and they love doing what they're doing, and TV allows them to do that.
No, it's amazing. Actually, I actually have kind of a distant tie to Oak Island, and that is that my wife actually is a distant relative somehow of Dan Blankenship,
Oh,
which just blows my mind.
yeah.
She actually happened to be at his last birthday party. They happened to go to Oak Island when he was having his birthday party there, and she actually got to meet him, which is really cool. So
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I mean, Oak Island is just an absolutely fascinating place, historically speaking. You start talking about the Romans and the Knights Templar and all this stuff. It is some fascinating history for me. Having worked down in the Dominican Republic, it also, somehow, some way, William Phipps, who found the wreck of the Concepcion and became the governor of Massachusetts, went to Oak Island,
yep.
in the late 1600s. What did he go there for? You know, don't know.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Deadfoot Diver. Subscribe and share. Your support means the world to me. If you'd like to contribute directly, you can do so at the link in the description at buymeacoffee.com/deadfootdiver. Every donation helps me work towards earning my Adaptive Dive Buddy certification, travel costs to help me assist other adaptive divers, and covering further training and equipment costs, bringing you on even more exciting adventures. Don't forget to check out my guest links in the description. And remember, grab an adventure and live.